My skepticism had definitely disappeared. I was really in awe.
Almost as rapidly as it appeared, it went. An extraordinary story. But what could be behind it? Some of what the airmen saw can be explained, astronomers say, by a rare coincidence of events in the sky that night.
One of these was the re-entry of a Russian rocket. This came in and burnt up in the Earth's atmosphere. It was seen by thousands of eyewitnesses all over southeastern England. And the second was a brilliant natural fireball, a piece of interplanetary rock burning up in the atmosphere.
Another astronomer thinks further confusion was caused by a third factor, a lighthouse on the nearby coast.
Although it's 6 miles away, it only looks as though it's a few hundred yards away in between the trees. And as the airmen moved around, the lighthouse beam too would have appeared to move in between the trees and retreated in front of them as they moved forward, which is exactly the way they described it.
That theory was backed up when the tape was played against the flashing of the lighthouse.
Right on this position here, straight ahead in between the trees. There it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flashlight there. So there it is. Hey, I see it too.
The two matched. But the Americans were well aware of the lighthouse and say that wasn't what they saw.
A lighthouse doesn't move through the forest. The lighthouse doesn't go up and down, it doesn't explode, doesn't change shape, size, doesn't send down beams of light from the sky.
The Rendlesham Forest encounters became the talk of the airbase. Lieutenant Colonel Holt knew he had to act.
I really didn't know quite how to handle it. I reported it to my superior, and I was quite concerned, to be honest with you, what his reaction would be. But he was very supportive.
He was told to write a memo to the British Ministry of Defence.
Including the undersigned.
I sent the memo, but I never heard. I kept checking and asking, but I never got a response.
Please.
But other airmen say secret investigations were taking place.
After the incident happened, there seemed to be some strange activity going on in the base. I'm really not sure what it was, but it wasn't normal activity.
At that time, we noticed that there was many unscheduled flights coming in. They told me that I was supposed to keep it quiet and not to take the issue any farther.
According to a former U.S. military intelligence officer, the flights were ordered by his colleagues.
There was a total blackout of any information leaving the base. Even the senior officials on the base were not told about these flights coming in and leaving. These flights contained teams of specialists. They were to gather specific data in their fields of expertise. All of that information then was to be sent to Washington, D.C., where it would be assessed and accumulated in a finalized, highly classified report.
Whatever conclusions may have been reached, Lieutenant Colonel Holt wasn't told. He's mystified as to why, as a senior officer, his report never even received a reply.
To this day, I'm very puzzled why nobody ever came back and asked for additional information, asked questions, or even interviewed me. It doesn't really add up.
But news of the sightings began to leak out. Local investigators began to take matters into their own hands.
We asked the local people if they'd heard anything and seen anything, and most of the local people said that they'd seen the lights over the forest.
A few days later, though, they seemed less forthcoming.
They'd all been told to keep quiet, and two of the local people who lived near the airbase told us originally what they'd seen from their bedroom window, and then when we went back they'd got MOD property private keep out, and they'd got barriers around the house.
The local investigators managed to get a copy from the US government of the Deputy Commander's memo. In Britain, it prompted a question in Parliament.
I have seen the memorandum to which my honourable friend refers. I am ready to give information about any such reported sightings that are found to be a matter of concern from a defence standpoint, but there have been none to date.
The case intrigued Lord Hill Norton, a former Chief of Staff at the Ministry of Defence.
One can't help feeling that something is being concealed. Either the Americans, and indeed the Deputy Base Commander, were hallucinating, or they believed that something had landed there and they had taken photographs and records of it. And in either event, it must be of interest to the defence of the United Kingdom.
Sergeant Jim Penniston is not only convinced by what he saw then, A cover-up could explain what he says happened after he left the US Air Force.
As time went by, a year or two, I had noticed that my mail was being tampered with, opened and resealed. And we also got to the one point where we found a listening device within my home.
Soon after the stories surrounding the Suffolk Air Bases surfaced, a large swathe of Rendlesham Forest was cut down, locals believed because of the radiation left behind.
When we asked why the trees were cleared so quickly, we were told because of the traces that were left on them. And we tried to find out who'd taken the trees away. No, we were told that they were just taken.
The air bases have gone too. With the end of the Cold War, the Americans left. But the mystery won't go away.
The ministry have doggedly denied that anything untoward occurred there, and I simply don't believe it. Therefore, somebody, I don't know who it is sitting on information which by now should be public.
If a secret report is in Washington, what could it contain? The former intelligence officer claims he knows.
That finalized report concluded that real objects were seen, that these objects were a result of a highly evolved, advanced technology. The technology was so advanced that we cannot to this day replicate it. That there was an intelligence involved, and that intelligence did not originate on Earth.
And according to the radar operator who first saw an object, it's far from being the only UFO incident.
These things are being picked up by radar operators throughout the whole world, not just in Britain. And we're not told what they are, and we're not expected to ask questions about what they are.
The Ministry of Defence admits they have more than 8,000 cases of UFOs on file. As for Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, although he never heard any more about his UFO report, it didn't, as he'd feared, damage his career. Soon afterwards, he was promoted from Deputy Commander to Commander of the airbase. Rather strange, you might think, if he'd been suspected of not telling the truth. We're going undercover now, but see you again soon. Good night.